Hello everyone, and welcome to Sovereign Lovestream.
Hi, happy Sunday. We are your hosts. I'm Vanessa.
And I'm Danny Panzella.
And this week we are talking about meditation.
And how you can unfuck relationships using it. And excuse me, I'm a little bit disheveled because I was running a little bit late this morning, so getting everything set up. Been doing some construction in the apartment, and I got a little carried away this morning, as usual. So I wanted to do a meditation before the show, and I ran out of time, so. All right, so why don't you talk a little bit so I can catch my breath.
All right, well, we are definitely not experts on meditation. We have kind of been on this journey where we are learning, I guess, to find our way in meditation. Not all meditation forms are the right ones for you. And I think we're in this phase of kind of testing out to see what works for us. I think a lot of us have this idea of meditation just being sitting down, crossing your legs, closing your eyes, and then sitting there for a really, really long time. And not everybody can handle that type of meditation.
I have a very hard time with that kind of meditation. And I think in my mind, and this may be a judgment, an ego judgment, I don't know. But in my mind, I feel like that's the goal. Like I want to get to that place. So we're going to talk a little bit later about the different types of meditation. And I feel like Transcendental Meditation is kind of like the idea that most people have when they talk about meditation, right? This idea that you can reach this level of conscious awareness and have like psychedelic experiences, but without plant medicine, right? Just through like meditative practice and breath work and stuff like that. And I definitely believe in that, and I think it's possible. But I think for me, that's like a very advanced level of meditation, and I'm not there yet. I have a very hard time. I've mentioned on the show that like my internal dialogue is very loud, and sometimes the sound of like my thoughts are so loud I can't even hear people that are speaking to me. Like literally, we'll be having conversations, and she'll say something, and I wasn't listening because my thoughts were so loud, and I was like, oh shoot, I'm trying to like replay what she said in my mind so I can catch up, so she doesn't know that I didn't hear what she said. But so that makes meditation very difficult for me because it's hard for me to quiet that like animal ego mind to just be silent. So for me, well, we'll get to that later. But I just wanted to kind of chime in about what you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, I think even for me, I can get lost in thought. I've tried to sit and just close my eyes and meditate for a while, and it can get a little bit overwhelming for me. I've kind of gotten to a place where I can allow the thoughts to come in. I can allow myself to just feel the sensations without judging them and thinking, like, Jesus, I am not doing this right. I messed up. I'm not paying attention perfectly. So it can get overwhelming for sure, but I've kind of gotten in a place where I no longer have that reaction to myself and simply just bring myself back to my breath or whatever it is that I'm focusing. One of the things I do enjoy is mantras, like sitting and meditating with mantras. I find that to be very enjoyable. I
have not done that. For me, maybe we should just talk about the different types of meditation now, and then
so we have the benefits of meditation.
Well, we'll talk about the benefits after. Let's talk about the different types, okay. And then we can talk about the benefits and how we apply that to our relationship. So the first one is mindfulness meditation. Basically, it's kind of listening to your thoughts, just kind of paying attention to what thoughts you're having, not judging them, but just kind of like observing them. And it's kind of like, I'm trying to think of like an example.
It's more like being present with your thoughts and paying attention to, I mean, for me, one of the things that I've heard people say is they don't have time for meditation. They don't have time for self-care. And so for me, at least my interpretation of mindfulness is being present. If you're sitting down and having your morning coffee, sit with your coffee. Taste it, notice the different flavors, notice how it feels going down your throat, notice the different sensations. That's, to me, that would be an example of mindfulness, of being present in the moment.
For me, I think I like to focus on my thoughts because they're so loud. I can kind of just like watch like observe a thought coming in and then think, oh, where did that come from? Like, what is that based on? What perception is that, And especially because recently I've been doing a lot of work with trying to heal childhood wounds. Sometimes like I'll have a thought, like, which is a reaction to something, right? Somebody says something to me and I have a thought and maybe I'm getting to the point where I'm not so quick to just respond, which is progress. It's great. that I don't just blurt out the first thing that comes to my mind. And then I'm like, wait, is that what they were saying? Or is that just based on like a trigger word that brought up a memory? You know what? Like, so if you observe those thoughts, then you can kind of see, oh, I see where that came from. That came from that time my dad said this and upset me, or so-and-so said this and upset me. This person is not saying that. It's not the same context. They're not trying to hurt me. They're not trying to upset me. So then I can like let it pass and then focus on what they're actually trying to communicate. And I think that probably for us in our relationship, that has been one of the most important things to help us resolve conflict, was just mindfulness meditation and being able to recognize when I feel triggered, why I feel triggered, and what the historical context of that trigger is.
And I think you had a really interesting revelation about presence, right? About living in the moment, the be here now. About recognizing when you're being triggered, is this moment triggering me, or is this moment triggering something from the past? And if it's something from the past, I don't have to bring it into this moment. Right. I can be present in just this moment. Right.
So if Vanessa says something that my mom used to say that used to upset me, and I just make an association and an assumption. Oh, she's saying the same thing my mom said, and so she's trying to hurt me because I felt like my mother was trying to hurt me. I'm living in the past. I'm literally living in the moment that my mother hurt me with her words, or when I felt hurt at what my mother said, because chances are when my mother said the same thing, she probably wasn't intending to hurt me either. So I'm literally living in the past in that moment. And then if I can just say, oh, I can observe the thought, oh, that's not what's happening. My mom's not here. What did you mean by that? Did you mean to hurt me? And then that's where vulnerability comes in. But the mindfulness is really like the first step, because without the mindfulness, you're just like, what'd you say? And then it turns into a conflict.
You're just constantly reacting and reacting and reacting without actually paying attention to what is being said, what is being communicated, the tone. You're just, like you said, living in the past.
You're right. If you can be in that moment, be here now, those famous words. Like, it took me a long time to understand what that meant. What does be here now mean? What does that mean? I am here. I'm right here. What do you mean? But yeah, if you can either be thinking about the past, or sometimes we're always thinking about the future, right? Oh, it's always about some hope in the future instead of just enjoying and appreciating what's happening right in this moment. And that's what mindfulness meditation has done for me.
Do you feel like it's helped you a lot, like that you are able to be more present now?
Yes, I think I have a lot farther to go. I know Vanessa would confirm that I have a lot farther to go. But I'm definitely much more present, because I think I, to a large degree, was always living in the past, to a much greater degree. And my ego, I kind of made that my story, and my ego would be like, oh, they're hurting you like mom hurt us, like dad hurt us. So, attack or cut them off, or whatever the reaction would be.
Put up a wall, put up a defense mechanism.
Yeah, put up a wall, create a defense mechanism. And usually my defense mechanism was trying to use some kind of like philosophical argument to try and bully them into backing down or wrestle them to the ground, right? Ideologically or philosophically.
Until we're just exhausted.
until we could have arguments that would just go on for an hour or two, and we literally would just become physically exhausted with it and give up. And just like, we would be quiet for a while, and then it would be like, what are we doing?
Like, what is this even about?
Now we can a lot of our arguments are ended within a few minutes, just because as soon as things start to like uptick, like the energy starts to get a lot more volatile or negative, like we both are in a much different place where we can observe that and just take a breath and step back and be like, oh, okay, we don't need to let it escalate to that point.
Yeah.
We can be like, all right, what's happening? What's going on right now? What's being triggered?
Let's figure this out. Yeah, what's the core issue, or what's really underneath this argument? A lot of times I think we tend to, as people, we tend to argue, and we are arguing about superficial issues. We're not really getting to the core. And it takes a lot of vulnerability to say, this is triggering a moment from the past. This is triggering a feeling from the past. And being clear, a lot of times we have this idea that we have to have this righteous anger. If I'm angry, I'm justified in being angry, and then I have to justify that anger in some way. And a lot of times we end up arguing, trying to justify our anger instead of really recognizing, this is really hurting me. It's not anger. I'm hurt, and anger is a defense mechanism for this pain that I'm feeling, and I'm not willing to be vulnerable enough to say I'm hurt by this thing. And
I think was a big part of my issue, was defending my anger, because I had created this like persona, right, of being an activist. And part of being an activist is like, we use righteous anger to kind of fuel our activism, right? And that's really where I had been for the last 10 years, like just being this angry activist and feeling like this was how I can change the world. And anger is not how we change the world, and it's certainly not how we change our relationships. So, kind of bringing it back to
I mean, I think we tried that for quite some time. We tried the anger and trying to convince each other of what our beliefs were, what we wanted. We had a therapist that used to say, you're bashing each other over the head. You're going to bash you. So, we would express something that we didn't like, and he would be like, so you're going to bash her over the head until she changes her mind, or you're going to bash him over the head until he changes his mind. And I think we tend to do that. We tend to have that type of reaction. I'm going to bash the other person in the head until they realize that they're wrong. They just need to be jolted back into reality. And the truth is, you're hardly ever going to convince somebody to see your point of view if you are bashing them over the head. And it's not until we get to the place of vulnerability, but again, that requires mindfulness. That requires you being fully present and saying, okay, why is this situation so upsetting to me? And we've had experiences where I don't necessarily know right off the bat what I'm upset about. And I'll just say, I need to take a moment because I don't really know what I'm upset about right now. I need to just figure it out first, and then we can talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing I can even add to that. Yeah, you want to talk about the next type?
So the next one is spiritual meditation, and this one is this could be practice in many different ways. This is what praying is to some people. Yep. To really just sit and try to connect with God, source, whatever your beliefs are. I think that mainly is it. Some people do that through a prayer is basically like a mantra, also just saying certain words that help get you into this place of calm. I know I grew up Catholic, and there were certain prayers that I knew when I was really stressed or frustrated that I could just repeat the prayer over and over and over and over again, and it would just calm me down completely. It's a source of comfort at times. It helps, quiet the mind. If you're saying these particular words over and over again, it's hard for your mind to just kind of step in and try to tell you something else.
Yeah. I grew up a born again Christian, and I think for me the differentiation I would like to make between prayer and meditation, prayer tends to be in like the born again Protestant arena. Prayer more tends to be like asking God for things, right? So, to some degree, worship, and also asking God for things. While meditation is more like listening for God's voice. And I think in where I am now, I don't really think we need to ask God for anything, right? I think God knows our needs, or, and will meet our needs. I think the problem is that we don't listen enough. We don't listen for the guidance. And whatever your belief system is, right? Whether you call it God or source energy or the universe or whatever it is, I don't think that really is relevant. Whatever,
or even your own thoughts. I mean, sometimes once you quiet your mind, your thoughts can come in with the answer. And if you don't believe that there's a higher source, it's just calming the mind enough for your thoughts to be clear again, for you to see a situation clearly, and then be able to figure out an outcome, right? Or a solution.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think it works on all of those levels. So I think meditation is really just more listening. And for me, the Bible says that God speaks in a still small voice, and like you really have to listen closely to hear it. And I think that's really true. And I think that's what the ego mind does. It creates a lot of noise, especially in my head. It creates a lot of noise that makes it very difficult to hear that voice. And whether that's, your higher self, your soul, your connection to God, whatever it is I don't think really matters how you look at it. But yeah, I think we can absolutely get guidance from that and be true to our true selves by doing that, by listening more.
Yeah. And looking at it, as we were saying, from like a non-spiritual perspective, just when you're doing any type of work, I know, we're homeschooling, and Xander sometimes will get frustrated by something, and I'm like, all right, well, let's take a break from that and come back to it a little bit later. And then, that kind of calms his mind a little bit, right? He's not like hyper focused on this issue that he can't solve in the moment. And then we're going to just take a break. It clears the mind a little bit. It like cleanses your palate, and then you can come back with a fresh set of eyes, and you can see the solution in a better way. And so I think for me, that's kind of how I see it. Even prayer. You were saying it's about like from the Christian perspective, perhaps asking for things. For me, it's always been about like calming the anxiety or the fear or whatever issue is going on. They're just calming the mind. If I can say a prayer over and over and over again, it just kind of calms my mind to a point where it's like, okay, now I can see the issue again with a fresh set of eyes and come at it from like a calmer perspective, I guess.
Yeah, I think Xander gets that a lot from me, just with the construction I've been doing in the apartment. When it's an old building, and so the electrical's all messed up, it's ancient, and when something goes wrong, I can spiral very easily into like a lot of frustration, which then starts like I start cursing. Like that's one of the lessons I learned from my dad, right? If you're doing something that's frustrating, if you curse a lot, it works, except it doesn't. So I tend to do that. I tend to like get real frustrated, and Vanessa tries to be like, why don't you just take a break for a few minutes? She's like, like I'm 9 years old, because I'm acting like I'm 9 years old. But it doesn't work. I'm like hyper focused, and no, I got to get this done, and I'm like task oriented at that moment, and I can't. And that's something that I need definitely to work on, is being willing to just take a break for a minute, relax. And I was thinking about it. I was like, why is there so much resistance here? Why is this not working the way I need it to work or want it to work? So I thought, like, in the moment, I think I'm being spiritual about it, right? Like, I'm being mindful. I'm like, okay, I recognize there's resistance here. I just don't know what it is because I'm so frustrated I can't see clearly.
And if you take a break, you would see, oh, the resistance is probably me. There's something that I'm having a difficult time letting go of. Or, one of the things that we've talked about also as, recently is manifesting things. How can we manifest things? How can we manifest a better life? And one of the things that I've learned, because I've struggled a lot with manifesting, is learning to manifest from a place of gratitude. And sometimes we get so angry, and so we're in this old apartment, and if we're sitting here thinking, this place is so old and crappy, I'm gonna manifest myself a brand new apartment, it's not gonna work because you're already anchored into the anger, into the frustration, into the hating the place that you're in, and it's hard to get out of that mindset. It is all in your minds. It is all just a mindset at times. We tend to get ourselves into a victim mentality. And then when you're in that place, you can't think of smart solutions. Manifesting isn't like a magic thing where it's like, oh, I'm going to manifest an apartment or a brand new apartment, and I'm just going to sit back and it'll appear one day. Somebody's going to call me and say, hey, I have this brand new apartment. Do you want to just take it for free? That's not going to happen. But when you're manifesting, when you set a goal and you're in a place of gratitude and calm, the solutions come so easily. Oh, I can do this. I can speak to this person. I can, you're in a place where the process to getting to your goal is much clearer because you've calmed the mind. And I think it took me a really long time to see that. I used to also think, like, if I'm manifesting, I just have to say the magic words, this is what I want, and the universe is going to, boom, just drop it in my lap. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
So what's the next one?
Focus meditation. Focus meditation is, so like when you focus on your breathing, it could be like any of your senses. You could close your eyes and just listen. And listen to all the sounds around you. Right? And that's a practice of quieting your mind so that you can hear and pay attention to what's happening around you.
Or feeling the sensations of your body.
Doing a body scan, they call it. Yeah. Just kind of feeling what is happening inside. For me, I actually do this a lot when I'm doing construction projects. So if I'm sanding something or if I'm painting something, like that's a way for me to kind of, it's kind of like a combination of movement meditation and focus meditation, where it's almost like the same thing as counting the mala beads or something like that. Like you're doing the same wax on, wax off.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what Mr. Miyagi was trying to teach Daniel-san was meditation, wax on, wax off. And it was about movement, but it's really about meditation. And when you're repeating the same actions over and over again, it really can help you get into that quiet the noise in your head.
Yeah, I recently started taking a mandala wood burning class with Miriam Gomez, and it's really exciting. I love the process of the repetition. Mandalas are really, it really is a relaxing practice of just like you're repeating the same lines over and over again. You're creating new lines, and it just turns into this beautiful piece, but it is all a meditation. I mean, I can sit there for hours and it's just so calming to the mind. So it doesn't necessarily have to be some like major work. It could be drawing. I mean, one of the things that we experienced was Danny has, he's an artist. He's into drawing, but he hadn't been drawing for a really long time. And I guess it was like a year ago that you picked it back up again. Or a year and a half. Oh, yeah, maybe 2 years ago. And it sort of just became this nice practice. He went through a period of doing a drawing a day, and it was this moment of sitting down, being with himself, and just drawing. And it gets your mind off of so many other things. And at times, when I'm doing certain things, like when I'm drawing or when I'm drawing my mandalas, thoughts come in and I can process them in a more peaceful way because I'm repeating a certain pattern, or I'm just so focused on this artwork that if the thoughts come in, they're not overpowering at that point because my mind is busy doing something else or something that I'm concentrating on. And that has definitely helped me process a lot of things. So art is a great way, I think, to practice some of this focus meditation.
Yeah, for sure.
So the next one is movement,
which is kind of like the drawing and the construction. It exists in a space between movement and focus meditation, because you kind of have to do both. But yeah, like everybody knows yoga. I do walking meditation sometimes when I'm walking around the neighborhood or whatever. Qigong or Qigong.
Yeah, I personally do enjoy walking meditation. We live in a very it's a very beautiful neighborhood with lots of trees and flowers, and especially during the springtime or the fall, it's like super colorful, and I love just walking through the neighborhood and observing the flowers, observing nature, the animals, and I could just get so lost in just enjoying the beauty of the nature in our neighborhood. Or you can do that at the park. It really is exciting. Xander is in a Earth Living Skills class. It's like a survival class for kids where they're learning. Well, right now it's on Zoom because of the whole quarantine thing. But what they have them practice every week is they have sit spot stories. So they have to sit anywhere in nature or even just by an open window and observe the sounds, the things that they see or smell, and just use their senses to kind of get a picture of what's happening. And he, we would go to the park and he would sit and I would be like, all right, well, let's do our sit spot. And we'd sit by the lake and just kind of listen. And sometimes I just close my eyes because I like to listen to the sounds. And I guess he must have seen me doing it because he closed his eyes too. And he goes, do you know when you close your eyes, you can hear things a lot better? It's like your ears can pay more attention to it because your eyes are closed. And I was like, yeah, it's so true. And it was a really interesting observation on his part, that he noticed, oh, I can hear the sounds a little bit better. And I was like, so what do you hear? And he's telling me all of these like things that perhaps we wouldn't have noticed otherwise. So it's a really fun activity to do, especially with kids. I think a lot of parents struggle with getting kids to calm down. And I mean, Xander's teacher has, 10 kids? And even when we do meet at the park, she has them sit down for like 15 minutes to do a sit spot. And they all find like a little spot by the lake and they sit by themselves and they just like observe everything and then they come back together and share. So it's a really good way to get kids to start getting into the habit of meditating and mindfulness.
Yeah, so I think if we bring this back to how meditation can help relationships, we've kind of touched a little bit on everything, but I think one of the biggest things for me is it has helped me become more empathetic. When I can observe my thoughts and recognize where triggers are coming from, come back to the present moment and realize, oh shoot, okay, so that's the past. I can let that go. I can be here now. And then I can listen. And when I'm actively listening, it's much easier for me to empathize. So really, it's the thoughts, the living in the past, that is the root of my whole struggle with empathizing. Imagine if you could increase the empathy in your relationship by 10, 15, 20% just by doing that, just by practicing mindfulness.
Yeah. How
much better your relationship would be. I mean, in our relationship has come light years.
Yeah.
From where we were. We had a question. Somebody had sent me a private message before the show, and she brought up a topic that is related and something that we have actually struggled with. So she was asking about we've had some issues in our relationship where I was in toxic patterns. Basically, what we're talking about, my childhood wounds, like I was being triggered left and right and throwing temper tantrums because of my triggers. And as I've grown, you've struggled sometimes with me, with trusting me,
yeah,
right? With trusting that I'm really changing, that those patterns are in the past. And so I guess if you could speak a little bit to that, about how you can, she was basically expressing the same thing, that she's struggling right now, that she sees her partner being much more empathetic and being much more compassionate and loving towards her. but she still struggles with the fear that he's going to fall back into the old patterns. And I know you've struggled with that too. So if you can speak a little bit to that.
I think that there's no set time as to when you're over these things. There are moments that you're going to have the fears, perhaps the insecurities are going to arise. And I think it all depends. We recently had an experience where I was triggered by something, and I was like, my brain was just going insane. I was like, oh my God, what's happening? What am I doing? Why am I back in this thought process again? And I finally, after, I thought about it for a couple of days, and then I talked to Danny, and I was like, I just totally went crazy. And he was like, how did you go crazy? We just had a conversation about it, and you were perfectly calm. And I was like, I went crazy in my head. I didn't actually outright go crazy, because in the past I used to be I would get upset and I would just bury the feelings, and then I would drink and explode. Once I was drinking, all of the nasty thoughts that I had when I was angry would come out. I was really I would let it all out, and there was no filter at that point. I would say the most hurtful things that I could possibly think of, because I was in so much pain. And so I got to a place now where I had the insecurities, I felt them, and I decided to try to process them, and I was struggling processing them. And finally I told Danny, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm experiencing. And I was like, I'm frustrated, because why am I still going crazy over this issue that is not an issue anymore? And Danny was like, but you didn't go crazy. And it took me a moment to be like, wow, I actually didn't go crazy. It just, the feelings came back, and I associated those feelings with me getting crazy, because in the past, those feelings were what triggered me getting crazy. So I kind of have come to understand that these feelings will come back in waves. I'm trying to remember the name of the book, but it's written by this guy who wrote the book, The Urban Monk. And he talks about the Zen teachings and how they're in a spiral. So you'll get to different layers of that same issue, like the unalome. And you'll go through different layers of the same issue. So if you're dealing with insecurity, perhaps in the very beginning, when you're insecure, you're going to act out. You're going to do something irrational. I mean, that's what I used to do. Then there'll come a second time, like another wave during my healing, where I'll feel insecure, and maybe I'll cry about it. Maybe I will get upset about it. Maybe this time I won't be drunk when that happens, and I'll express it. I'll be like, I'm really hurt by this, and I'll cry and whatever. And then the next level of healing, I'm gonna still be triggered by those things. I'll still have the insecurity, but I won't explode over it. I can be patient with myself and say, okay, I see where I am right now. This triggered a feeling that I had in the past. I can work through this. It seems like this person here can identify and recognize that our partner is making an effort, but those feelings are still there, and that's okay. It's perfectly normal for those feelings to still be there. And maybe there will come a point where it's going to be just such a light trigger or a light insecurity that it's like, oh, I remember that feeling. Oh, it's not as bad as it was last time. And they're just layers and layers and layers of healing. It doesn't just disappear overnight. This was a couple of weeks ago that I was having this experience, and we've been working through this for 2 years, 3 years now.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes it just slips in. One of the things I've learned is to simply allow the feelings to come in, welcome them. Thank you for joining me again. And thank you for trying to protect me, but I'm safe. I see my partner's doing his part. I see that we're able to have this conversation. We've had conversations where I will tell Danny, I still have certain insecurities. I still am afraid that you're going to fall back into these patterns. And I hesitate to share that with you, because I don't want you to think that I don't see your changes. I do see them, but those fears are still there. And luckily Danny's also in a place where he can hear that and not get triggered by that and not get defensive and say, well, what do when are you going to stop? When are you going to stop feeling insecure?
And there was a time that I was getting defensive like that. And so that's part of my work, is to try to rein that in and not let my ego get in the way of getting defensive because she's having some feelings. And that's part of the vulnerability. So my advice, as somebody who judges myself constantly, I'm working on that, is, you judged yourself. You said, I got crazy. I got all crazy about it. But go easy. Be patient. You're going to have those feelings. And the other thing is that if you can try and use the mindfulness meditation to recognize when you have those triggers, like, I'm feeling insecure because I'm afraid you might slip back. Realize, I'm living in the past. Mm-hmm. He's healing. I see his progress, his work. I recognize that's a thought from an old, like that's a past moment, and I can live in the now. I can be here now and realize that he's not doing that, so I don't have to be afraid of that. If he does slip back into an old pattern and we have a conflict, we now are in such a much better place in our relationship that we can deal with that conflict.
Yeah.
And be vulnerable, right? If you're having that feeling like you did, you can come to me and say, hey, I'm having this feeling of insecurity because it's like triggered from back then. I know you're doing your work and I know you're not going to slip back into that old pattern, but I'm just having that feeling. And that might be a way to help your partner, like to be vulnerable, to say that. He may be, or she, they might be less likely to
get defensive.
To have their ego triggered by that and get defensive.
And I think it also is part of working on yourself in a relationship. Sometimes Danny and I have had these conversations where he's still struggling with certain things. And I remember, was it like a year ago, we were in Boston and we were having this conversation and he was like, I was still triggered and I was still feeling this way. And then afterwards he was like, I don't understand how you don't have any traumas to heal from. And I was like, what did you say? I don't have any traumas to heal from? Are you kidding me? I'm constantly working through my traumas. It's a daily practice. And it kind of made me realize that I didn't share that process with him as much. I wasn't being as vulnerable and saying, hey, I'm struggling through this thing right now, but this is how I'm working through it, or I'm feeling this way. I tend to like keep it all inside and work on it myself and just be quiet about it.
And you know what, I'm just like having this thought is that because you made it look so easy, because you kept a lot of it internal, it made me judge myself more. I'm like, she's like, it's so easy for her to do this. There must be something wrong with me, that this is such a struggle. It's so hard for me to be empathetic. It's so hard for me to be compassionate. Like, I must be a real piece of shit. And we make that joke, like, are you gonna, ascend? Are you gonna become a better person? Or are you gonna remain a piece of shit? And we made it into that joke so that it kind of disarms it, so that I don't so then I laugh and I don't really feel that depression of, my God, it's so difficult for me to just be empathetic and it's so easy for you. So yeah, like if you're not vulnerable, your partner may be having those feelings too, like, man, it's so easy for them, and I'm just such a horrible person that it's hard for me to even be compassionate. I like this comment that Cheryl made about children teaching us how to be more mindful. And I think for me, the reason why I think my son has helped me is that it's a lot easier to be empathetic with a child. Right? Like, I used to tell this to Vanessa all the time. She's like, well, you can empathize with Xander, but you can't empathize with me. And I'm like, yeah, because Xander's a child. He doesn't know any better. You're an adult. You know better. You shouldn't be allowing these things to trigger you, which is so hypocritical because I'm triggered left and right. So, right? Like, I should know better too, right? If I'm going to be fair about it. But I try not to say that anymore. I don't think I say that anymore. But yeah, absolutely. Children can teach us how to be more empathetic if we can, be present with it, right? Like if my son makes a mistake I'm not like, oh, you're an idiot. What's wrong with you? He's 9 years old. He doesn't know, he's just learning a lot of these things. So, I mean, and why shouldn't we treat our partners the same way. And actually, Tony Duck made the same comment, a similar comment earlier. Why wouldn't we choose compassion with our partners, with the love of our lives, right? People that we've chosen to spend our lives with. Why wouldn't we always err on the side of compassion? And,
And this is actually one of the, we were having a conversation a couple of weeks ago where Danny was struggling to be empathetic with somebody in our neighborhood Facebook group, and he was saying, well, I have to hold these people accountable. And I said, if I'm the love of your life and you have this reaction when I'm holding you accountable, how do you think a stranger is going to react to you holding them accountable? Like, this person doesn't know you from a hole in the wall. So why would she think that you're being, like that she has to respond to you and your accountability? Like, that makes no sense at all. And ultimately, we can just be kind to others. We can, we can hold them accountable in kind ways. We can guide them back to that accountability for themselves, not because they have to prove anything to you or to me or, to anybody else. It's just, guiding them into that place. And I think that, if we were to speak to everybody else the way we would speak to a child, we would be
not in a condescending way, but in the patience that you have with the child who's struggling to understand something. I mean, we all struggle to understand things in different parts of our lives. I'm not an expert at all things, obviously. So if somebody teaches me something, I need them to be patient and understanding with me in order for me to be able to be open to understand that explanation. And I think that, especially when we deal with children, we kind of learn how to have that patience. And, it all starts at home. So if you're able to have that empathy and patience with your partner, it's going to trickle down to everybody else that you interact with. We should be interacting with everybody as if they are the loves of our lives, because, it's a human being. It's a human being that really is just a mirror of yourself. And, I try to remind myself of that, because I do find myself at times being impatient with people. I'm a homebody, so I don't interact with tons of people. But when I do go out, like grocery shopping, or I'm out and about and somebody like triggers me or annoys me in some way, I try really hard to bring it back to, this is a person who is showing me something about myself. There's something there that is causing me to have this reaction, and I need to look at that. Yeah. I just was going to say something, and so this kind of brings us to the core of our spiritual beliefs, which is that we are all connected. God is love, and we're all connected via our soul, right? And so, Jesus said, love others as you love yourself. And the way I interpret that is that we're all part of God. Mm-hmm. Right? We're all pieces of God. A piece of God resides in all of us. So in a sense, we are all the loves of each other's lives, right? Everybody, all on the planet, we're all connected, right? It's the illusion of separation that makes us think like, oh, this person is my enemy. But we're really all a part of God. So if we start to think of people that way, and then it makes it a little bit easier to be able to say, okay, this person's offending me right now, but it's because they're reacting to their traumas, and I can have compassion for that, and be forgiving and be compassionate and not respond with anger. Like Tony Duck said before, always choose to respond with love and compassion, because that's really ultimately what we are. Mm-hmm. And that's what meditation helps us get back to, right? It's reconnecting to your, sometimes they call it centering your chi, or getting back to center. It's getting back to who you really are. Your higher self, your authentic self is love. That's what you're made of. Yeah.
I want to address this question about what childhood what about the childhood you guys had? I think that this applies to any traumas that anybody could have. I think that I had a very easy childhood. I had my parents are both very loving and compassionate beings. There are little things. I think sometimes our childhood traumas are misinterpretations of things that we've experienced.
Yeah.
They come in, it's maybe a clashing of personalities. Somebody says something to you that hurts you, and you take it as this person hurt me, and you shut out all other reasoning, especially as a child, because as a child everything is so big. Your feelings are so big and you don't know how to control them, you don't know how to handle them. Xander's taking right now a class on he's 9 years old, and he's taking a class on emotional intelligence. He's learning how to control his emotions, how to work through his emotions, how to allow them to exist while overcoming them.
Not so much control his emotions as control his reactions.
His reactions to the emotions. Yeah. So it's beautiful that he's coming into, he's going to grow up with this information, with this knowledge. Not all of us have that experience. So some of us just are hurt, and then we take that hurt and it's like, oh, this person hurt me. And you grow up thinking that. I was recently watching a show. I don't know if anybody watches Queer Eye on Netflix. And one of the people they were helping, this kid had grown up with a family friend taking care of him, and then at 11 years old he had to go back to his parents, and he didn't understand why. He was under the impression that he had gotten into an argument with his caregiver, and he got so angry that he wrote in his journal that he wanted her to die. But he was 11. Kids at that age are reactive, and again, emotions are big, and if you don't know how to work through them, you'll spew out whatever. He wrote this in his journal, and he was under the impression that this caregiver read it and sent him back to his parents as a result. And now he's an adult. He's in his, I think he was in his 30s or his late 20s, and he had gone all of these years since he was 11 years old thinking that this woman who had been his mom for his childhood had rejected him because he said that to her. And so he was growing up with this feeling inside this whole time, feeling unworthy of love because he had reacted that way as a child. And they wound up reuniting him with her, and she had a completely different explanation. She had a grandchild who needed to be taken out from the foster care system, and she couldn't have both children, so she had to send him back to his parents so that she could save her grandchild.
The state literally wouldn't let her have both kids.
Exactly.
So they forced her to give him up.
And so it was not at all, it had nothing to do with that argument. She didn't even remember that argument. And here was this guy going through life with this idea that he had, rejected her or hurt her to the point where she rejected him. And so sometimes it was a very clear example to me of how sometimes we go through life with these misinterpretations. I recently had a conversation with my mom where she shared some experiences of her own childhood, and I was able to see some of the things that she said to me growing up that I had taken to heart, and I realized, oh my God, she was just repeating what she knew, from her own mom. It wasn't that she was being hard on me or trying to hurt me in any way. She was just repeating what she knew. And it was with that understanding, my relationship with my mother can change dramatically. My relationship with myself, the insecurities that I've been carrying all these years, I can let go. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a major trauma. Like I wasn't in an abusive household or anything like that. Sometimes there are small traumas that create these ideas or these stories, like Danny says, that we just replay over and over and over. And so then if Danny says something that triggers that story, I'm like, oh, there, he confirmed that story that I know to be true. So now I have to defend myself against him because that story says this is hurting me. Now I have to defend myself, and I have to shut you out in that part of my life so that you don't hurt me again. And it's a lifelong process of having to go through these, work through these traumas, work through these miscommunications that we experience. And for us, mindfulness has absolutely helped. I was, maybe like 6 or 7 years ago, just a ball of anxiety. I was constantly anxious. I was constantly depressed, frustrated, and if you don't know where to start with meditation, I would suggest a guided meditation. Go on YouTube, find a guided meditation. If you can't sit for 40 minutes, sit for 10 minutes or 5 minutes. You can find a quick 4 or 5 minute meditation as soon as you wake up. I mean, Danny and I have had experiences recently, even within the last year, where we're frustrated by something or anxious about something, and Danny will wake up in the morning and he's like, do you want to just do a guided meditation? And we just lay in bed and we listen to the meditation and we go with it.
That's a really fast, easy way to get started. I actually really like guided meditations because my internal voice is so loud that if I'm focused on listening to a meditation, it's a lot easier for me to kind of go along with it. So yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a really great place to get started. And there's so many great ones on YouTube. I like the Abraham Hicks ones, but there's so many different ones.
Yeah, and for any situation that you're in, I mean, there are guided meditations to relieve anxiety, to help you sleep, to get you started and motivated, in the beginning of your day. There's so many things.
To forgive yourself, to forgive others.
Exactly.
To be more compassionate.
And there you go. I got gaslit into believing I was less than by my family. Abuse is real. It certainly is. I'm so sorry that you had that experience.
I had a similar experience to that too, to some degree, yeah.
Yeah, it's these are things that are very traumatizing, and you carry them for so long. And I just want to say that we tend to have these experiences and then we hold on to them. We want to keep them. And we think like, well, I'm protecting myself because this is what happened to me when I was younger. And you create these defense mechanisms. I would definitely look into trying some forgiveness meditations. Even if you're not ready to forgive your family, maybe just to forgive yourself. We don't realize sometimes that when somebody else hurts us, we adopt those behaviors and hurt ourselves too. So, maybe meditation to help you find peace. There's so many options out there. And I know it can be overwhelming, but we definitely got to give it a try.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe try some meditations that just are about self-worth and just knowing that, you're a piece of God, your core is made up of love, and you are worthy of love, both to give and receive. And that's something that I've really been working on because similarly to Fishmeal, I have, from when I was a teenager, like my mom and being in the born-again Christian church, I was judged a lot because I was kind of a rebellious kind of guy. I'm not the kind of guy that goes with the flow. Like I like to do my own thing. And I was judged and shamed and told that I didn't deserve things and that because I wasn't a good enough Christian or, what that meant, whatever that meant to them. And I internalized it and I made it part of my story and I believed it for a long time. And then I rebelled against the belief. So now I became like this egomaniac. Instead of being insecure, I developed this egomania, this narcissism, that I was better than everybody else. And obviously both of those, either depression and insecurity or narcissism, are totally out of balance and not healthy either way. So you have to be able to come back to a place, what I'm working on, I should say, is coming back to a place where I can forgive the people that told me I was less than and understand that they were dealing with their own stuff. And when you feel like you don't control the world, you want to control other people to kind of make it fit and make you feel like you have some control. And I think that's what was happening. And so I can forgive them for that and realize it was their fear that made them react that way. Mm-hmm. And also forgive myself for being a narcissist, for reacting to that pain that I was feeling, the rejection I was feeling by becoming a narcissist, and work to come back into balance and realize that I'm not better than anybody else. We're all made of love. We're all perfect. We're all beautiful. And, as Derek Rose says, you are beautiful, you are powerful, and you are free. And I'm not better than anybody else. I'm not worse than anybody else. And I can just focus on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I had a comment that now I forgot. Yeah.
Madam X, you can feel free to change the channel if you don't like what we're saying. Totally cool. We forgive you for it. We love you for it. It's no problem.
Oh, what I was going to say is once you start on this healing process and you start developing that self-worth, it's also you start having the ability to set clear boundaries. Not everybody is going to be willing or accepting of the fact that you've kind of stepped into your own self-worth, into your own healing. It's going to trigger some people, it's going to especially trigger people who depend on you not knowing your self-worth. And
energy vampires.
Exactly. And so at that point, it is necessary to set some clear boundaries. You might have to cut people off, and that's difficult. It is very difficult to cut people off who are not helping or are not beneficial to your new lifestyle. But it's the only way. Otherwise, you're going to get sucked right back into that same cycle of abuse and, being taken advantage by the same people.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons to forgive them. Not for their sake, for your sake. If you're going to hold on to those things, then they have power over you. But if you forgive them and let them go, every time you're in your power and they attack you, you can just let that go and say, oh, they're in pain. And so they're attacking me because they're in pain, because they can't handle the fact that I'm now in my power and I recognize my own worth. So the forgiveness of people that have harmed you is really more for you than it is for them.
Yeah, to avoid having to carry all of that weight of other people's expectations or ideas of you. Sometimes we don't realize how much of that we're carrying, so...
Yeah, I think this is absolutely spot on. I mean, when you're at peace and you can love yourself, you're, as Abraham Hicks says, you're in your vortex, and yeah, everything you want will come to you. Peace, love, happiness.
Yep.
Whew.
All right.
That was a good episode.
Yep.
We honestly had no idea what we were going to talk about until maybe an hour before the episode began.
So definitely send us topic ideas. We'll start thinking earlier this week. We've been so busy renovating that we completely forgot about the day of the week and waited till the last minute. Yeah. But I think this was a really great topic. I hope you guys will also share some of your meditation techniques, what works for you, anything that you could suggest to somebody who's starting off on meditation. It's not... It can seem overwhelming at first if you've never tried it, but it doesn't have to be. So I guess my suggestion would be definitely go for a guided meditation. There are apps now where you can do a quick guided meditation. There are apps where you could try breath work also if that's something that you're interested in. Or yoga. If you don't know where to start with yoga, YouTube has tons of channels. I like Yoga with Adriene. She has like a 30-day calendar that she'll put up every month, and it has a bunch of different yoga videos that you can tune in and follow along. Some of them are 10-15 minutes, others are 40 minutes long, so you can find whatever works for you. There's so many options out there.
Yep, just do it. I'm a procrastinator, and I still have not developed a meditation practice that I really feel like I can be proud of, or that I'm like, I struggle with the discipline. And so don't wait, do it, start today, develop a discipline, a habit. Thanks everybody for joining us. We really appreciate all your comments and input into the show, and we love you and appreciate you.
Thank you. Have a great Sunday. Do you want to put our social media?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Please follow us on social media. We're on all the big social media sites, of course. But also, as I say every week, I want to talk about Minds.com and Float app. These are two privacy-centric. They do not sell your information. They do not phish your data. And they are also anti-censorship. They do not censor. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, all the big social media companies are now openly saying they're going to censor things like holistic medicine. With COVID, they've been censoring posts about vitamin C, for crying out loud. I mean, it's ridiculous. So Minds.com and Float app, are two places where they do not censor and they do not sell your information. So these are some awesome social media sites that you should check out if you haven't already. Thank you so much, and see you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.